Sunday, December 2nd, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I'd like to first talk about the live stream I did yesterday. It was an hour and a half. It was a good live stream. A lot of people participated. For some reason, when I was uploading the live stream after it ended, I did what I usually do, end it, and then a box comes up and you press done. And when I pressed that box, it just disappeared. So I'm not sure what's happened there. This has happened a couple of times now. I think next time I do a live stream, I just have to not press that done box and wait until the live stream is uploaded as a video. It was being uploaded yesterday, but after I pressed the done box, it just disappeared. Previously, I would press that done box, it wouldn't happen. So I apologize to those who wanted to watch it again or who didn't watch the live stream. Yeah, we'll see what happens next time. This morning, I want to talk about Bitcoin, the stock market, and Bush Sr. And what's happening in terms of the Huber hearing. That's supposed to be on December 5th, the same day as George Bush's funeral. I'll talk about that. I spoke about Bush yesterday, and I even have an interesting personal story related to Bush. Not directly, of course, but and I'll talk about that later. So what about Bitcoin and the stock market? Well, I want to talk about the technicals for Bitcoin and the stock market. And for Bitcoin, I have to say, I got this. I received an email from, I think, Blockchain Times, and they were talking about how Bitcoin dropped the same amount percentage-wise back in end of 2013. Beginning of, up until 2015, how the drop in Bitcoin at that time was the same as we've seen now. And, I wanted to look at that, and lo and behold, they were right. And I want to look at that. I have, back in 2013, I was already getting involved in Bitcoin. And I think one of the reasons why, I never followed through was because it rallied so much, came down, and I was busy doing other things as well. This was around the time when I set up my my business, my pawnbroking franchise, and I was quite busy and I didn't have time to keep an eye on it. But it looks very much like 2013 to 2015 that we're going through right now, and even the dates match a bit. So I'll bring up here the first chart of Bitcoin, and it's from CoinMarketCap, and it shows Bitcoin from around April 2013 to around, let's say, December 2015. And you can see there how on the right-hand side, you got the price of Bitcoin. The left-hand side is the market cap. You can see how Bitcoin went from, under $100 in July of 2013 all the way to $1,150 on November 30th. Was it? Yeah, let's have a look here. Yeah, November 30th. So exactly about 5 years ago, it traded up to a high of 1,149, and then it dropped. The low was, let's see here, January 17th, 2015. So it took quite a while. It took over a year to bottom. And it dropped to 197 from 1,120. So that was like an 83% drop. And you can see that it took a while for it to how can I say, to move back up. And it was only in 2017, actually, and I'll show you the chart now here, 2017. Only back in January of 2017 of last year that the price went back above the old high that was reached basically November 2013. So it took over 2 years for Bitcoin to regain. Well, 14, 15, it took over 3 years, I'm sorry, to Bitcoin to make new highs, to beat the January 2013 highs. And then it went all the way to, of course, let's see here exactly when that was. The high in December 2017, 19,800. And the bottom now that we've had around 3,500 is around the same percentage. How can I say, move that we had from 2013 to 2015. So am I saying that it's going to take another 3 years for Bitcoin to trade above 20,000? It could be, or it could be more or less. But I think it gives people an opportunity to get back in if they believe in it, of course. This is just my opinion. It's not advice. So this is not the first time that, what I want to say is this is not the first time Bitcoin has lost so much ground. And I think some people are jumping the gun saying that cryptocurrencies are done with and they're finished. So I just wanted to show you that. There's also a story that I saw today, this morning on Zero Hedge, and it's coming from JP Morgan, the analysis. It says JP Morgan spots a rare and even worse omen for the market. And what are they talking about here? Well, they're talking about the 1 month US OIS rate forward, or OIS rate forward spreads since the 1990s. So these are just interest rate spreads that the bankers calculate, and you can see that right now here by this chart we're at levels last seen in 06, 07, just before the 08 crisis, also seen around 2000, 1999, 2000, just before the dot-com bubble burst, right? So I think that's an interesting story here. Recommend you have a look at it. I'm not going to go over the whole thing. Just wanted to show you the chart. Now I want to look at a few charts of the stock market. I saw a headline as well this morning that, of course, that the G20, it says here, because they had dinner, the Americans and the Chinese delegation, and it says it's a truce. It's a truce. Trump and Xi agreed to new tariffs, no new tariffs after January 1st. Keep tariffs at 10% for 90 days. So how's the market going to react to that? I don't know. I think the rally we saw late Friday and the day before maybe and last week was more anticipation, by the rumor. I don't think this is going to be taken positively, but you never know with the markets. But one thing I do know is that the technicals don't look great. So first of all, let's look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So you can see here that I've done my usual moving averages, 50-day, 100-day, and 200-day, black, red, and green. And notice that we've just crossed under the 50 days, just crossed under the 100-day. So that's not a good signal. Yes, we're back above the 200-day moving average in terms of price, but the momentum isn't great. And that, that crossing under is not good either. So that's the Dow. Let's have a look at the S&P. Well, S&P, we're not even back above the 200-day. The 50-day is fast approaching the 200-day moving average. It's already crossed underneath the 100-day quite a while ago. Of course, the Dow is just confirmed, this 50 under the 100. So that shows that things are not improving. And the NASDAQ composite, and even that one now, the 50-day is crossed under the 200-day. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a death cross yet, because for that we also need the 100-day to cross under the 200-day. But that will be the next step, I think. And we're nowhere close to the 200-day moving average, which is about 7,500. Up until recently, the Dow hadn't confirmed, the move under in the moving averages by the NASDAQ and the S&P, and now it has. So technically, to me, that doesn't look great. And as I've said before, most of the gains in the stock market in the last few years have been because of the technology stocks, or the FANG stocks. So the fact that the NASDAQ is not looking great at all is not a good sign for the stock markets technically. So what about Bush? Bush Sr.? I mean, we all know that Bush Sr. was a CIA guy, skull and bones. He went to Yale, which was where the OSS, the predecessor of the CIA, recruited. His father, Prescott Bush, through his business interests, helped finance both sides of the war during World War II. His companies were, he was prosecuted for the, Trading with the Enemy Act in 1942. We all know about Operation Paperclip, how the CIA helped bring thousands of Nazi German scientists and other German intelligence agents to live in America. Why would they do that? Well, because America's biggest enemy after World War II was also Germany's biggest enemy during World War II, the Soviet Union. So it was natural that they would approach the Nazis, and that was Operation Paperclip. And I highly recommend a book that I talked about yesterday in the live stream. And again, I apologize for that it wasn't uploaded and it disappeared. It's a book called The Loose End by David Morsilli. And David Morsilli, he was on the live stream yesterday. He's one of my subscribers, and this is his first book so far. It's a thriller. A Loose Ends by David Morsilli. You can get it on the Kindle app, or you can buy the hard copy. I almost finished the book. It's a mixture of a history book and a thriller. He alternates the chapters. He talks about the history of World War II, CIA, and then he gets back to his story. And it's basically a history of the deep state, shadow government, CIA, Skull and Bones, Yale, Operation Paperclip. I highly recommend the book. And it's really timely that I bought this book now. And we have, Papa Bush, Poppy Bush, they call them, die at age 94 on November 30th. Which is another interesting thing. Some people that look at numbers say that it was 1130, and if you add those two numbers, you get 41, and he was the 41st president. And some people in the alternative or in the Q community, so to speak, that have been following Q, and to be honest, I haven't been following that. Someone that I subscribe to and I listen to her videos sometimes, Erin Scott. She's upset. She made a video yesterday. This is effing bull excrement. Q and Trump gave in to the deep state. And why is she saying that? Well, because President Bush's funeral is going to be on Wednesday, December 5th. And that's when the House GOP plans to hold a hearing on Department of Justice's Clinton Foundation probe. It's the Hoover hearing, I think it's called. So what's going to happen now? Because President Trump has declared Wednesday a national day of mourning, and he's going to close even the stock markets on that day. Will the hearings go on that day? And if they do, it will be totally, the spotlight will be totally on the funeral, of course, of President Bush, 41. There's still a lot of people who think, he was a great president, haven't looked at his past and his family's past. They're kind of blind. The other story I saw this morning on Politico, and I don't read that, I just Google it to see if there's anything. And it says, despite bitter family rivalry, Bush wanted Trump at his funeral. And it just goes on to say how President Bush, 41, actually voted for Clinton in the 2016 election. So what about my story related to Bush? And don't worry, I'm not an Illuminati. But as you know, I grew up in Brazil, and my father he used to sail a lot. Where we lived near Rio, sailing was like a big sport because it was right by the bay. Very good waters to sail, and my dad used to sail star boats. And he used to travel around Brazil to sail in other places. One of the places he used to go to was São Paulo. They had like a big lake in São Paulo because São Paulo is not by the sea. And of course, when you do travel around to sail regularly to other places, you make friends. And my dad made a friend. And his surname was Walker. I'm not going to give his first name. I just think it's more. I'm just gonna get. He's passed away anyway, about 10 years ago, and at the time I was probably a toddler or even not born yet. And this guy, Walker, American guy, he lived in São Paulo and he used to sail. And my dad met him, and they became friends from sailing. He was cousins with George Herbert Walker Bush. It was only later that I found out and realized, I guess when President Bush became president. Before that, he was vice president. So I don't, Mr. Walker didn't tell us much about that, but he was his cousin. So that's how the connection comes. But the funniest part was back in around 2004. He was traveling in Europe with his wife and one of his granddaughters, and he came to London and he contacted me, and I was at work, and he said, "Oh, why don't we have lunch one of these days?" And Sarah, my wife, he invited my wife and my daughter Annabelle to lunch, and this was around 2004, and it was just around at the height of, or in the wake of, the Iraq War. That Bush Jr. waged, Tony Blair, the weapons of mass destruction, all the lies. And we were at lunch with him, his wife, my daughter, his granddaughter. And he asked Annabelle, and she was only about 8, "Oh, do you know who the first president of the United States was?" And Annabelle said, "Yes, George Washington." And then he asked, "So who's the president now?" And she said, "Well, it's the bad guy, George Bush." and there was silence at the table. And I said, "Wow, Annabelle, what are you talking about?" And I said, she must have heard that in the news and like in school or something. But I'm actually glad she said that. So that's my story to do with the Bushes and that family. What about this guy Walker? Well, he was a very nice guy, but looking back now, that what I know about the Bush family and their relationship to the CIA, I wouldn't even be surprised if this guy was CIA, and one of the reasons he lived in Brazil and in Sao Paulo in the 60s could have been, to do with the CIA. So there you go. I apologize about the live stream yesterday. Hopefully next time, I'll be able to upload it. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Share it far and wide. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care.